All right, Mr. Walsh, would you mind going back to the podium and you won't have any recording. Okay, we're going. Okay. All right, we're going back to item number 3, open time, and we're having a reprise of Tim Walsh's comments regarding trees. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. My name is Tim Walsh. I'm a resident of Corte Madera. Wanted to thank everybody here for giving their time for such an important cause. I think we're all believers in the fact that we can make a difference. So thank you. My second point is I want to offer my assistance in anything I can do in the replanting of trees in Corte Madera. Certainly they've been mentioned no less than 7 times in the action plan, and I'd be happy to help implement some of those directions. And then lastly, encourage the committee to encourage the town to make it a matter of policy to replant trees that have been removed due to disease or risk of falling or any number of things. There are a number of people along Montecito Trail. That was the most recent tree removal who volunteered to water and do whatever's necessary. And Marin Water District has approved the replanting of trees. So just encourage the town to get in the habit, separate and apart from this committee. Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Okay, and then we just completed the election of chair and vice chair, and I just want to make sure, Martin, since you can now hear us and participate, we have a motion and a second for Dave Johnson to be chair and Amy Rouse as vice chair. Just wanted to get your vote on that.
That's fine. Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous then. Thank you so much. Okay, Dave, you are now chairing the meeting. Sure, that would be great. You can take your nameplates with you. Yep, that would be ideal. This portion of the meeting is committee member updates. So this is just members of the committee. If you happen to have anything that you want to communicate to your fellow committee members or the public, information, meetings you've attended, things of note, this would be the time to do so. Committee member Alden.
I'm not exactly prepared to give a presentation, but involved in a number of regional programs around climate action and solutions. And at the next meeting, I'll be happy to give a more detailed report. The United Nations Association has an event on Friday, September 23rd, I believe. It's an all-day conference on solutions. It's going to have more of an international focus. And in January 23, on Friday the 20th, I believe, there'll be one that is more regionally focused. There are numerous things going on around the Bay that I will do my best to connect our team with, as well as across Marin. And I think Marin Climate Action Network will be really trying to help organize things here in Marin County as well. And that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Anyone else have anything to share?
I have some updates just around events that we are participating in, but perhaps that falls under
the next item. Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, hearing that no other committee members, let's move to the next item, which is item 7, discussion of community outreach priorities. So this is an opportunity to think about how the committee wants to engage the public, either in person or in written materials. And we also have Mike here today, who is in charge of communications, who can provide some feedback in terms of how best for the committee to work with his staff in terms of getting outreach to the public. So are there priorities and events coming up that you think we need to have, the committee needs to be on top of?
Well, I was thinking about the priorities from the perspective of both where we're focused and where we will be focused, like in terms of actually attending. So it might be helpful just to note that the two main priorities in terms of our outreach have been around EV adoption. And I should just say overall, so transportation, I should say, as a header, and energy. So I think that's something to just consider as a group. If those are the two we want to continue to move forward with, I believe it is. And on the transportation front, the first action that we focus on is rethinking how you get around. The second action is pledging to make your next vehicle an EV. And energy is first actions conserve energy and save money. And the second is switch your gas appliances to electric heat pump models. So that's sort of like the header of where we're focused in terms of content. And I guess I would say, is that where we want to continue to go? I think it is. And then on the forefront, we have the Lions Club car show coming up on September 10th. And we are partnering with Ride and Drive Clean to show up there. And so as a committee, we need to just think through. I know there was some discussion of retooling the content that we have at the table, so we might want to discuss that. There is a Lions Club meeting on the 22nd that we're presenting at. That if I think about an informal agenda, it would be who we are as a committee, what the focus is of the CAP, the actions the public can take to support the CAP. And then the third outstanding event would be the farmers market at Town Center, that we have not decided which dates we will attend. That is an open item, but I feel like that could be a great place ongoing for us to have a presence.
Thanks, Amy. I would add to that the Oktoberfest event. And if there are any additional, I don't know how much longer the Sunday concerts at Piccolo Park.
That was the last one.
Was that okay? We're done with that. Okay, next year we'll put that on our list. But one of the things we might also want to do as we start to discuss this is the ad hoc committees. It's having a list, and we might need to bounce back and forth a little bit between our topics, our items on the agenda, just so that we can think through events, other types of communication, and then what our priorities are. I think Amy, I would agree that staying focused on energy, the built environment, and transportation. Really, those are the big percentage points, right, of emissions throughout the Bay Area in California, certainly in Corte Madera. So what you suggested, I think, is really good. But having ad hoc committees where we can really dig into what we need and come up with a list of things we need to produce, items for various and sundry events, I think is sort of that next step there.
I think it would be appropriate for the committee to speak up in favor of the Corte Madera overpass improvements that ensure a safe and separate pathway for pedestrians and cyclists, which will do a lot for us to diminish car use and encourage people to get out and walk and ride. And I also think we'd be doing the community a disservice if we concentrated on emissions and transportation and didn't consider landscaping. I think it's critical to our environment, to our well-being as people, to the wildlife, to water. And I don't think it's particularly a good idea to say, oh, that's the water district's domain. I think as a town, we can do a lot. I think it's a lot easier for people who can't even dream of buying an EV to go out and buy 10 milkweed plants and feel like they're doing something really nice. And they are.
I have a question. Where did we land on improving the web presence for the committee? We talked about that some time ago. Where did that, and Mike, is that something in your purview?
Thank you for having me today. Mike Moriarty, I'm with the Communications and Code Enforcement Manager for the town. Bob asked me to come today to speak with you and really go over how we communicate with the community, and but at the same time, develop a process by which you funnel information to the town. And so I think we're going to need to rely on Bob on how that, how that process works, because the Brown Act and having independent communications and stuff. So my goal would be to put out messaging to the community, a united message from the committee on pretty much anything that you are actively working on or envision in the future. We use a number of platforms. We use our website. I'm going to get to answer your question, but it's an opportunity to just kind of give an overview. The town does use a few different ways to communicate with the public on an outreach, and that's the website, a weekly newsletter on Fridays. We use social media platforms, Facebook, and we use Nextdoor. We also, on our website, we can create what's called a news flash, and it sends a text message or an email to the community on things that are occurring, immediately or contemporaneous. We can leave it on the website for a significant period of time. Over the last several months, I've been working with Mr. Wall, who's been providing information on behalf of the prior to the existence of this committee on climate-related issues, and a lot of it was EV with Ms. Rouse was assisting with that as well. And so for several weeks, we were able to really communicate a lot of events that were happening EV-related in Marin and beyond. And so just today, he provided some new information on the Green Building Code that will be in this week's messaging. But to get to the chair's question, I haven't really been advised as to where we're headed with a dedicated web page for you for this committee. So at this point, I'm going to rely on direction from the committee and using Bob as the channel between town management and leadership to see what our parameters are. Whatever that you as a committee want to reach out to the community, we'll develop a strategy how to do that. So if it's our website or creating, we have control over our current website, and we can create pages and extract information from external sources and include it and create links, etc. But really, just does that answer your question? I'm not sure if I've accurately answered that question, though.
No, that's good. But
okay.
So we haven't really, because we had talked about it as a group and created kind of a wish list of some content and improvements, but that hasn't been.
No, we never really finalized a structure for updating the CAC webpage or content, and that's what Mike's looking for. We'll talk in a moment about creating ad hoc subcommittees that can sort of focus down on some of these very specific issues. And if committee members are volunteering to help in those efforts, then a subcommittee structure probably is the best way to go, because again, we won't have to worry about public noticing on that work. I'd also say that I was going to announce that the town has a job description out, a job posting out for the permanent climate action position. And so once that individual gets hired later in the fall, probably November, that person will work much more actively with a subcommittee to actually help create content. But I think in the interim period, it's going to be more committee members, trying to, like as Martin has in the past, produce some of this material or, organize events that you're going to participate at, et cetera.
Yeah, and that is has been before the town council. It's going to be a go for sure. And that person, whoever it may be hired, is going to be an integral role in providing information to and being a direct report to town leadership. And so I'll work with that individual as that is to get the messaging out of whatever you're working on. They're going to be very intimately involved with what you're working on, and work with staff to foster and develop those dreams and visions that you have.
Speaking of dreams and visions, do we have a dream or vision of when that person might be in place?
The expectation is that interviews would be in early October, probably a hire in November.
And if you didn't see that on the recent agenda for the town council, it's on there, the job description, the pay scale. I mean, and so the town is committed to filling that position.
Mike, how often is the town website used by the members of the community? Do you follow that, or?
Yes, we were able to track clicks. It's somewhat skewed because we, the town staff, actually, I use the town website multiple times during the day. So our numbers could be somewhat skewed, but I don't have that number available. But it was in a recent staff report of this, 18,000 clicks or whatever the number was. But I was a little concerned because I know I click on, 10 times a day. So I'm not sure if we're able to see the external based on external IP addresses. I would have to circle back with you on that. But I can tell you that on our newsletter that goes out, and we have 6,500 subscribers, or people who, and about 3,500 individuals open that newsletter, and we can track the actual individual clicks of what content was reviewed. And so the climate related, we can track those, who's actually reviewing it. So that might provide us a little more specific details that are related to climate. And of course I could ask Lorena, who's our administrative analyst, who very computer savvy and might be able to give us those accurate numbers a little readily.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
So what we talked about in the past was having to be a resource for people that are interested in decarbonizing in various ways, clarifying what the focus of this committee is, and giving an overview of the cap, even though it might be someplace else, but to have someplace that we can, as we're out in the community, we can direct people to as a resource that hopefully is current when a big incentive changes, or there's an opportunity for people to do something.
Yeah, the website's pretty easy to maneuver, and for us to support it and upload in content. So if there's additional content that you would like to see on the climate action pages, an overview of your vision, and just anything that might come up, if somebody from the committee could be the point of contact to communicate with our staff, that would be great.
I think you were encouraging us to wait till the ad hoc subcommittee discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if there's anything pressing, I'm available all the time, both by email, phone calls, cell phone, kind of a workaholic. So I'm happy to answer late night calls or emails or whatever. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Martin has his hand up. So Martin.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that Mike has been very supportive of helping me get the material on the Corte Madera Chronicles, and I don't know if this is the right time to talk about it, but I believe the important things right now is to get information about the upcoming decisions and direction on the building code, and get information out to the public on that, to avoid to ameliorate the issues of they're taking away our stoves and all that stuff, which I've heard. So that I think is important. And if we can talk about that now or later, I'd very much like to be involved in the communications. Thanks.
Other committee comments, questions?
Just circling back on, thank you, Mike. I'm circling. Did you get somebody to take my place at the Lions?
Yeah, Leslie.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, we're covered.
Yeah. I don't think so.
Okay, our next discussion item then is ad hoc subcommittees.
Actually, before we move on, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I know you brought up the point about the landscaping and how important that, so how do we as a committee have a conversation about that? Does it have to be another agenda item on the next?
It would. And we'll talk at the last item about what agenda items are forecast for the next couple of meetings.
Got it.
But in between meetings, I'll also start working with the two co-chairs and we'll work on devising the agenda for the upcoming meeting. So
Okay.
if
I
I
just
miss
want to make
something.
sure that we got that. Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, discussion of ad hoc subcommittees. Again, this is an opportunity for 2 or 3 or even 1 committee member to take on short-term tasks that you can work on these, outside of the normal public meeting process, bring the results to the committee as a whole. So it allows you to get, some work done in the trenches.
I have a couple of suggestions. No surprise. Communication is going to be critical. So I think having a core group that Martin and I'm happy to volunteer for this as well, to start working on the website and communications now, since there are a couple of upcoming events, Lions, Farmers Market, and Oktoberfest, certainly. So getting a website, at least a landing page that we can direct people to, I think would be really helpful. Another subcommittee or ad hoc group could be just community engagement, just going out and making pitches or presentations to business groups, homeowners associations, that sort of thing. Keeping track of policies that are going on, not just here in town, but also what our other jurisdictions in Marin are doing, so that we can stay on the same page and support each other from one town to another. And then events, keeping a calendar of events and then working on the details. Those would be my 4 suggestions for outreach or for ad hoc committees, subcommittees.
Can you give those 4 again?
Communication.
Yeah.
Events. Community engagement. Outreach. And policies, climate action policies.
And the website would occur under communications.
Mm-hmm.
Would newsletters and content for the table be included in communications? Like, I know we've discussed having talking points and a clear message of how we discuss what we're working on, all of that under there. Okay. And then we would just execute it through the events. Okay.
That makes sense.
All right. And then what about like a subcommittee to gather volunteers? Because I think we're learning that it takes sort of a bigger group.
That was kind of my thinking too I didn't say it, on the community engagement, outreach and engagement. So making presentations and inviting people to join us.
Got it.
So that we don't have to kidnap people and put them to work.
Where do the student ambassadors fit into that, into one of these 4?
I guess that's sort of a combo of volunteer and I guess communications, but
Meredith,
Does everybody know
don't
what we're
forget to push
talking
your
about
button.
with the student ambassadors?
I've been introduced to them.
Okay, great. Okay.
would student ambassadors fall under community engagement then?
I think in terms of it being a resource for volunteers.
Yes, that was my
thought. For sure.
Okay.
And like getting in the community and doing speaking opportunities. I think we'd love to hear from the students.
Okay.
I just have one more note too on that. I think they could influence the communication too.
I missed that.
The student ambassadors could help influence the communication.
Absolutely.
And I imagine the events would also work on the prior working group had talked a lot about the fact that you need better facilities for events, for tabling and that sort of thing, which is lacking. So that would be part of events, I assume.
I think there's cross-pollination amongst these. So without stepping into the Brown Act issue, if there's one person from a subcommittee who can talk to another person on another subcommittee to coordinate, is that allowed? Is that possible?
Probably not if you start getting into establishing a quorum. So if
two people.
Yeah, as long as, well, but the problem is, as the city clerk pointed out last time, is if you have two people on a subcommittee working together and two people on, let's say, another subcommittee, and then they start communicating between the two subcommittees, then essentially you've got a majority of the committee that are
being really careful to have one from one subcommittee and one from another, so that they're like the chair of the subcommittee and they're making sure that they're coordinating.
We can work on that.
Good, because it's going to be really hard to get anything done otherwise.
I recognize this is your government structure.
Hey, Bob, based on the conversations you'd had with the working group prior to this and your experience, were there ideas for ad hoc subcommittees that you had expected we would be bringing up?
Not necessarily, and these can change. Any meeting you can establish them or eliminate them. But no, I think that these were sort of the areas that at least the communications, including the website, the events, and community engagement were all ones I was thinking of.
And policy would be pending policy regulation. That's what you were thinking, Leslie?
For instance, Dana Armanino is going to give a presentation tonight about the countywide EV adoption proposal that's being drafted among all 12 jurisdictions. So that would be something that if one person would take it upon themselves to do the deeper dive, to read everything, and to pay attention to what's happening in other towns as a possibility, as an example, or if something is coming before our town, that engagement with our community to make sure that people know that a particular item will be discussed or voted on by our council that has to do with climate action and a policy recommendation from staff. And I think that we should know about that, right? We should be on top of that. And it would be great if we had a cadre of Corte Madera citizens who would be willing to speak in open time or on that agenda item at a council meeting in support of or to make comments on a potential item that the council might be voting on.
I think the only thing that I'm hoping that the committee will be working on in various ways would be the helping the residents in Corte Madera understand the incentives that are available, and maybe it's the role of this committee to prod the town of Corte Madera to make where they can make things easier for the residents rather than more difficult. I don't know exactly. Does that go under communication and website?
I think certainly the resource availability, yes. I mean, many of these cities that have climate action websites, one of the most important things there are pushing people out towards resources, rebates, more detailed information, that sort of thing. So I think that's certainly part of that.
Mm-hmm. And events, I would say, but I think we've also discussed, like, are there connection points with the community in town where we could be highlighting and publicizing those as well, building as an example.
Question I have is, do you want to consider populating those subcommittees at this meeting, or would you rather wait till the next meeting and think about it, who wants to volunteer, et cetera?
I think if we have some open discussion, I think some of these things people already have an interest in doing. Mm-hmm. So I think we may.
Well, and we have the car show coming up on September 10th. So by a forcing function, we actually have to.
Okay. I am really happy to work on communication policies as well. Okay, and events and community outreach. But happy to lead on communication and policies too. Maybe not lead on that, but certainly be part of that.
Great. I can do events.
Given the nature of the student ambassador program, I'd like to be involved with communications and community engagement.
And Martin has his hand up. Martin?
Yes, I'd like to continue with communication. That's the thing I'm most interested in, and can contribute.
Meredith, I'm sorry. Can you clarify, Meredith? You talked about through the ambassadors working on communications and community engagement. Were those the two?
Yes.
So was there something you were interested in?
More policies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say
Fill in that.
probably the calendar or engagement.
So do you want to for discussion, do you want to kind of put that together in our notes and then we can codify it in our next meeting as an action item? Does that make sense?
Sure.
So we have discussion now and then we'll act on it next meeting. Does that make sense?
And in the meantime, I guess Martin will continue his role of generating written content.
Yes.
Well,
Happy to do it.
thanks, Martin. So then how do we tackle what we want to cover at,
You could do it.
we just go do it.
Yeah, just go. And then, my suggestion was just to make this, let people think about this just for until next meeting.
Okay.
But please, if you'd represent us for the September car show.
Yeah, and so I can, and
I'll be
Leslie
there
and I
too.
then have a September 22nd event where we could just take that. But
Yeah.
so can Leslie and I work together on what is at the table?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And it's fair game to invite community members who are not part of this committee to be to help populate these subcommittees, because there's no way that one or two people or even three can handle all the things that we're talking about. We really need to have that outreach to other community members and bring them in as volunteer help.
We could have that agenda. I think we're going under our next, at the end of the meeting, we could, if we want to, we could describe that as an agendized topic for our next meeting. So people would know, anybody that reads the meeting minutes, this is where we're going on subcommittees.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I think the idea, right, would be that once we accomplish something, we move on. Like it's an ad hoc subcommittee. So once we get all the communication in place, we move to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Do we want to make just a draft list of the functions or the focus areas for each of these headings, just for now, just as a draft, so that we can start thinking and populating? Does that make sense?
I feel like we need to say, especially under communications and events, at least like a short list of things that need to happen before the next meeting. Can we do that?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So knowing that we have the car show coming up, we are partnering with Ride and Drive Clean, and they'll have content that we could have at the booth, obviously, to promote transportation. But we have documents that I think we want to polish up a bit. So what do we think we can accomplish in 3 weeks?
Great question. I think that we need to order a new table covering. We need to draft a binder of kind of the key points that we're working on in this town with this committee. We need to have incentives, rebates, et cetera. We need to have the connections to the resources around the county, including County of Marin, Electrify Marin, Bay Ren, which has, and PG&E, et cetera, as well as I think there's state funds that we can also have. Anyway, we need to talk about that. But for these events, we need to have, the particular items that we talked about a year ago. How do we engage people? How do we get people to come to our table? One of the things that we talked about was having some giveaways and a wheel, something like that. So, if it's a priority and we want this to be successful, then we just need to do it and make it happen. So, right?
There you go.
Okay, so we might need some money to produce some of this.
So can we divide and conquer on that list right now?
Do you want to at least appoint an interim subcommittee to specifically work on these events for September? Because it sounds like there's work to be done between now and the next meeting.
You're gonna need to.
Do we need to act on that to make it official?
You do.
Okay. So
That's what you're offering up. Okay.
So how many people can be on this?
Up to 3.
Up to 3. Okay. I guess it's you and me for starters.
Yeah.
Who's our lucky third?
Again, this is working on events between now and the September meeting so
Right.
that you're ready in the fall for events.
Happy to help.
Oh.
I'm happy to help, but if someone else would like to take the third spot, that is totally fine as well.
do I have a motion? Somebody want to make a motion, Leslie?
I move that the ad hoc subcommittee for events over the next 2 months consist of 3 members of this committee: Amy Ruiz, Meredith Foster, and myself.
Second?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay.
Martin, can we get your vote?
Yes, aye.
Thank you.
And no abstentions?
And so is that it?
Is it?
Okay.
That's
So can I talk about the specifics really quick? Because I think we can knock a couple out right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will reach out to Ride and Drive Clean about their involvement. We've discussed partnering, so it's just a matter of what that looks like. And I'm happy to reach out to Electrify Marin and get their content as well. So I'll take that as a action item. In terms of talking points, I have a starter, so I can maybe between you and me, Leslie, fine tune that. In terms of the table stuff, we have a tablecloth. We need a banner.
Yep.
Can we just reorder the same
I will
one?
do that.
And then for the other elements, depending on where, I know you and Martin were looking into the cost on some of that. If we want to just get 1 or 2 posters, do you guys want to? Not Martin, sorry. Meredith and...
Okay.
Do I
Right,
need a
so-
motion or something on that?
No, you don't.
Okay.
No, that's subcommittee business. You can
Okay,
you can deal with that offline. Okay, anything? Okay, anything else regarding this item? If not, we've got a couple of brief presentations and then an item with Chris.
Let's go.
Okay, all right. So the next item is a presentation from Damon Armanino from the County of Marin, trying to update you on what Marin Can is doing. And this is right at the outset of their work, although it's been a lot of preparatory work. Dana, take it away.
Great. Hi. Thank you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen. And I do have to say, this, I was asked to give kind of an intro on what Marin Can is and what it is. But I see Leslie Alden in the room. So, basically we would be nowhere without her. So sorry for the remedial, Leslie, but I'll try and make it quick. So Marin Can, formerly known as Drawdown Marin, is an initiative that was started in 2017. It is a community-driven campaign to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions, prepare for climate change impacts, and meaningfully address and integrate equity. Again, it launched in 2017 by resolution of the Marin County Board of Supervisors. over the course of the process with setting up the executive steering committee and the focus groups, it was decided to set goals of a 60% reduction below 2005 in greenhouse gas emissions by Marin County, so countywide, by 2030, and draw down GHG emissions by Marin County to below zero by 2045. And to clarify, as you know, each jurisdiction is responsible for adopting their own climate action plans with their own goals, but this is that guide for what we would like to achieve across jurisdictions for our entire community. I can speak for the county in that we did incorporate and try to align our goals with these goals as we did the update to our climate action plan. A little bit of a history on it. Again, it started in 2017. Went through a 2-year planning process, which involved over 150 people. They designed climate solutions across 6 focus areas and engaged the community in discussing those potential solutions. In December 2020, the Board of Supervisors received the strategic plan and gave the go-ahead to continue moving forward with the initiative. The big thing that came out of that strategic plan process was the decision to shift, and rather than be a county led initiative, it would become a nonprofit, so it was more community led. Those 6 stakeholder collaboratives that I talked about are the renewable energy, energy efficiency in buildings and infrastructure, low carbon transportation, carbon sequestration, local food and food waste, and climate resilient communities. Through that planning process, the executive steering committee saw presentations for, and Leslie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 29 potential climate solutions. These 7 were endorsed by the steering committee. And they actually also, again, the county incorporated these 7 projects and initiatives into our climate action plan to further bolster and endorse those initiatives going forward. Where possible, we are trying to support implementation of these solutions via assistance in applying for grants, connecting implementers to resources, and supporting them as much as possible with staff time, providing technical assistance wherever possible. Marin Can is not yet in a position to provide direct funding for these initiatives. We're just getting up and running as a nonprofit, but the hope is that someday there will be funding in order to provide grants to potential climate solutions. But ultimately, that will be a decision for the nonprofit board of directors. The new nonprofit, which the county does continue to initially support with our staff time, is in development now. We've filed the paperwork with the IRS and have just completed the application and selection process for forming the board of directors, who started hosting their first meetings in May and continue to have monthly meetings. We also, at that time, took the opportunity to update the initiative name. The name now is Marin Can, which invokes a positive can-do approach to addressing climate change and equity locally. Next steps will be to strengthen and support the board of directors as it begins its fundraising, its development of implementation priorities, and support of climate solutions identified in that strategic plan. Some of the recent accomplishments to date for Drawdown Marin and Marin Can is that we had 37 people apply to serve on the new board. We've secured $2.2 million in funding, or at least helped secure it, to implement 4 of the climate solutions. We have received $105,000 in private donations to support the launch of the nonprofit. Through a grant that we received from the Marin Community Foundation, we were able to fund 30 community ambassadors, and 2 community projects were funded serving the canal residents by canal residents. And also under that project, we issued 1 equity report card. And I think really I wanted to keep this short because I think the important thing is the discussion of how can the Climate Action Committee and Marin Can work together? How can they coordinate? I have a couple suggestions, but really I just want to open it up to brainstorming with you. coordinating with the other climate and sustainability commissions and committees throughout the county, breaking down those walls and silos between jurisdictions, taking the individual actions that I'm already hearing you guys discussing, supporting partners and projects, not just endorsed solutions, but other potential projects as well. Again, I'm hearing you guys talking about Drive Clean Marin. That's awesome. And then supporting adoption of countywide initiatives. So I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there is the countywide initiative or model ordinance around the reusable foodware ordinance. There is the initiative to do all electric new construction, and a model ordinance is being developed around that. Also a model ordinance around energy efficiency requirements for renovations and remodels, additions, alterations, that type of thing. We would love to, have your support as we bring those things forward, coordinate and support you guys in any way we can. And then finally, just would love to brainstorm with you all about ideas that you have for coordination. And I know you guys have a lot on your agenda, so I'm going to stop there.
Dana and Bob, Dave Johnson, one of the things that's on my mind is how the recently voted into law, how the Inflation Reduction Act and the money that's going to generate through the system might be influencing where we focus or where we leverage things. And I'm just wondering, maybe it's an agenda topic for us for next time, but have you started to think about how the IRA is going to be influencing your work?
Great question.
Dana?
On our side, we don't know the specifics of how the funds will flow, but we're definitely, as an organization, starting to get our visions together for different, the catchword on a lot of these things is shovel ready. And so we're starting to think about our needs for our facilities. Where might we want to put EV chargers, and what would be needed to have those ready to go? What community resilience centers. We're working with the Marin County Free Library to start talking about, what would be needed to turn our libraries, including the Corte Madera Library, into a community resilience center, so that while funding, isn't available right now, we would be ready to start to have those conversations. That's kind of the extent of the planning for us for right now, but we're definitely monitoring everything and look forward to leveraging as much as we can.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Any other brainstorming ideas?
I guess I would just say anything that we can reuse in terms of messaging or content that we can table, because we have a very small committee and a small subcommittee. So if there's items that that are packaged and ready to go, make it really easy. So that on the pipeline on any of those initiatives you're talking about, that makes it easier for us to push into the community.
We have social media packaged things that are all set up to push out through your social media channels. We've shared that via the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership. I'm happy to send it to you all as well, so that you have stuff you can push out content wise. We're always happy when people take materials from our website and repurpose it for theirs. We can repackage if you need it. I heard you mention reaching out to Electrify Marin for resources for tabling. Mark Chahabria on our team would love to share resources and flyers on his program. We can, if you reach out to us, we can set up a little tabling kit for you with materials that we typically take to our tabling events. And yes, by all means, we would love to support you.
Dana, great presentation, and thank you. One of the things that you mentioned, and I think we're all talking about, this is a very small county with only 12 jurisdictions, and that collaborative piece, so that we're not siloed, is really important. And one of the things that happened when we started crafting things for Drawdown Marin was that when San Rafael wrote their new climate action plan, they incorporated a lot of the same icons so that there was continuity, visual continuity, to the extent that we can broadly share things that look visually similar so that we're sending out the same message so that people who are, no one just sits in their house or is in one town, we're all traveling about, but to have a consistent messaging that all 12 jurisdictions share, I think would be really helpful for the larger community to start recognizing some of these efforts. Anyway, I don't know how we do that, but if we could pull one person from each of the communities, one sustainability commission member or climate action commission member, or committee member, and meet quarterly or something. And I know you guys are stretched thin in terms of bodies and resources, but if you could help convene that. Or
we are working on trying to do that. So yes, we are excited to, as we start to develop that and get that rolling, get you guys integrated in that. Do you have someone in particular? Should we reach out to the chair or?
Yeah, you can reach out to the chair.
Okay.
Yeah, that was another thing I wanted to circle back on is this. If your body has the ability to convene all these disparate commissions and committees, that would be precious.
I'll just mention that we're actually having a meeting tomorrow. I'll participate, and I think it's Barton, is it? I've forgotten who is participating from Corte Madera, but I think that the lead has been from San Anselmo Sustainability Commission, I think. But anyway, the idea is to start collaboration between the various towns. And
great. Yeah, I believe, is it Jody Timms Fairfax is leading that. So I will see you at that meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
I forgot that was on the calendar. Thank you.
What time is that tomorrow? Do either of you know?
It is at
3 p.m.
And again, we can have up to 3 of you in on that call.
Could someone send the link?
Again, we didn't know who wants to sit in because I think Martin already.
I'm not able to, so
I can do that. I have to move another meeting, but I can do that.
Leslie, is there anybody else who wants to attend? This would be a good one on policy, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
And Phil.
Zoom or is it?
It's Zoom. Yes. Okay, I'll get you that link.
Thanks.
If there's one left over, I'd be happy to participate.
I think that we already had your name on there, Martin.
Yep.
Oh, okay. This is actually the first I've heard of it, but I'm available and can do it.
So Corte Madera will be well represented. Great. It's exciting.
I love the enthusiasm.
Is there any other ideas in the brainstorming category that anybody else wants to bring up? Thank you for offering to share your table materials. That'd be
sure. And, anyone, for future meetings, if you want any updates on any of the programs that we try and promote through the sustainability team, I heard you guys mention Bay Ren. We're happy to give a presentation on all of our programs, just so you guys are up to speed on what's currently available. It's an ever-changing landscape. So just let us know, and we can, either myself or someone from my team can come down and give that presentation.
We'll talk about future agendas in a few minutes, but our September agenda will be on the countywide electrification ordinance, the building code.
Yay.
And October, I think we'd like to bring to you the reusable foodware item.
Excellent. I like you guys are getting wheels to the road.
Well, we had a good warm-up period, so we've been ready to go for a while.
2 years.
Excellent.
Like most of COVID.
Yeah, I hear you.
One thing that would be helpful, especially with respect to the upcoming work that we all have to do on the building code, is to have a unified set of frequently asked questions that we can use to diffuse objections for folks that haven't read the entire thing. I mean, that's what we need to do, is be more of an ombuds.
Yeah, we do have on the county green building website, I believe it's marincounty.org/building code update, green building update. I'll get that link to you. But we do have an FAQ that we have been updating as we go. And again, you guys are welcome either to point right to it or take any information you want and repurpose it. You know, we're here to facilitate you guys. So whatever you guys need, if you need it customized in some way, let us know.
Can you send that to me?
Sure.
Thank you, because I've had trouble finding it on the website. That's probably my problem.
Dana, if you can just send any of these links to me and I'll get it to the entire committee.
Okay.
Given that it's 20 to 6, should we move on to the next item? Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be staying close.
Okay.
Okay, this next item is a presentation, a brief presentation on the brand new Marin County Electric Vehicle Acceleration Program. And we have Christina O'Rourke, who's the author and who you met last month, who also authored the Climate Action Plan.
Yay.
Yeah, I can take full credit for being the author. This was the work of a subcommittee, which I'll tell you all about. But good evening. Nice to see you all again today. I will try to make my presentation brief since Bob just promised it to be brief. Let me bring it up for you. Oh, you know what? I forgot to. I have to share my slide first, my screen.
You should be a panelist. Here we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I just did things out of order there. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody can see the presentation.
Yeah.
So yes, I am here to talk about the Marin County-wide EV acceleration strategy, which we released on August 4th. And I know it was distributed to you prior to the meeting. Hopefully you've had a chance to kind of look over the strategy. This strategy was created by the Marine Climate and Energy Partnership. I told you about MCEP last month when I came here. And it's been funded through TAM's Alternative Fuel Program. So the goal of this project is to accelerate EV adoption to meet the targets that are set in our individual jurisdictions' climate action plan. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a future slide. And the intent for the strategy is that this is more, we want to, first we're shopping it around, we're getting some feedback from our climate action committees, our sustainability commissions, from local advocacy groups, and we're getting input, and then we're going to be going back to the jurisdictions, to the city and town councils to get them to accept or adopt the EV strategy. So our process, as I said, was we first formed a subcommittee to draft the plan. Phil Boyle, who is on staff for Corte Madera, was one of the subcommittee members. And we started off by developing some guiding principles. The next thing we did was we conducted some pretty extensive outreach. We took a couple of months to do this, actually. So we talked to all of our jurisdiction staff, including public works staff and fleet managers, because we really wanted to understand what the barriers were to for municipal chargers and for municipal fleets. We also talked to community leaders, people from nonprofits, as well as state agencies. And again, the idea here was to really understand what the barriers and challenges were to widespread EV adoption, so that the strategies, the actions that we developed were in direct response to those barriers. And then finally, we also did a literature review, and we looked at other agencies' plans, as well as guidance from the regional and state agencies that they produce to help guide local governments to develop EV acceleration plans. So these are the guiding principles. They are in the appendix of the strategy. Again, first of all was to align with and support our local climate action plans. We have some pretty aggressive EV targets in those plans. So this plan, really, the strategy is meant to help to achieve that. We also wanted to be sure to provide equitable access to EV programs. We know that people who are low-income people, people in communities of color can have more difficult time purchasing, affording to purchase or lease an EV, especially because there's not a lot of used EVs out there on the market. And also because people who are living in multifamily buildings, it's much more difficult to charge as well. So we decided to do this plan like we have done, like I talked about doing the climate action plans, our greenhouse gas emissions inventories. We want to coordinate countywide. This really helps to make sure that we're being more consistent and efficient and cost effective with the work that we're doing. We wanted to be sure that we're able to track and measure the progress of the strategy's actions so that we can report out on our progress. And then we wanted to also focus our government actions on those that would really efficiently use public funds. There's a lot of need out there and there's limited dollars. So along those lines, we want to leverage the money that is out there from the regional, state, and federal sources. And then also to address kind of the private market and really help to support and accelerate EV sales and charger installations that are available by the private market, because they really are a key player in this whole field. A little bit of background. These are existing conditions and kind of similar to the GHG inventory report I showed you at the last meeting. Countywide emissions from the transportation sector are responsible for more than half of community emissions. So this is 2019 data. So it's really is important that if we're going to meet our long-term climate action goals, that we address this sector. And the passenger vehicles are responsible for 80% of transportation emissions. So we do focus a lot on passenger vehicles in the strategy. The chart here on the left is showing you the rate of ZEV adoption. ZEVs they're battery electric, which are about 2/3 of the fleet out there. Also plug-in hybrid. So those have a gas engine, but you can plug them in and use the electric engine as well. It's not really an engine, but the battery. And then fuel cell electric vehicles, which we have very few of in Marin County. So the blue is showing you kind of what the green bars on top are, how much were added. So we are on this really nice trajectory. The graph on the right is showing you the percentage of CEVs by jurisdiction. Jurisdiction, this is kind of loose because it's zip code data. So we are including like unincorporated areas. Countywide, we're at 5.8%. And then you can see what, like, my eyesight is not very good here. Okay, Corte Madera is a little bit, I think it says 7.2% for Corte Madera. Probably what you might expect, the more affluent communities, or the communities that have more affluent residents, maybe I should put it that way, like Ross, Belvedere, and Tiburon have the highest rates of EV adoption. They're already at over 10%. So this is just a quick overview of the GHG reduction and ZEV targets and all of the plans, really kind of the takeaway here. And Corte Madera's is one on the low end of the spectrum at 25%, and then we go all the way up to 100% for Fairfax. These are all pretty aggressive goals. I mean, if we're only at almost 6% countywide, and we need to get to 25% by the end of the decade, by 2030, which is only in well, that data was from 2020, so that's 10 years to get to that level. So there is a lot of work to do. The EV charger needs, according to the CEC, they do provide this data online. It's really easy to find, and they update it, I think, pretty much semi-annually. At this point, there are about 740 chargers, public chargers in Marin County. 75% of those are actually considered public. So those are like in shopping centers. And then about 25% of them are what they call shared private chargers. So those are generally like multifamily workplace chargers that really are intended for residents and employees to use. Undoubtedly, there is the number of single family home chargers is much higher. If you look at places like Tiburon and Belvedere, where they have 10% of the registered vehicles are EVs, and there are only 2 public chargers in between both of those towns, you know that all of those people are charging at home. So if you have a single family home, it's a lot easier or much more feasible, I should say, to get your own EV charger. 71% of housing units in Marin are single family homes. That's 74% in Corte Madera. So we think with the proper incentives and education and outreach that we can really make a good dent in the market where people own single family homes and have that ability to purchase and install a home charger. The real greatest need is going to be for shared private chargers in multifamily buildings and at workplaces. The projected need here for 2025 is a state projection, but you can see like the public chargers doesn't go up that much. The biggest need is these shared private chargers. And that's really kind of where the challenge and the opportunity is. So there's an opportunity here when you talk about REACH codes next month to make sure that our new multifamily buildings are ready. Have EV ready parking spaces so that we'll be ready for this all electric transportation future. TAM did do a EV charging station siting plan back in 2019. Some of these projects have actually been completed already. They did note that level 2 chargers in the areas of like Southern Marin, especially around Tam Junction, Mill Valley, Strawberry, had a lack of level 2 chargers, and also frontage roads along Highway 101. And then of course, just like these very high use locations like shopping centers and parking lots, school parking lots, smart stations. The ferry terminal is a really high priority, park and ride lots. And then they also noted the need for level 2 chargers in Marin City and in the Canal neighborhood of San Rafael in order to support equitable EV access and adoption. The report, which was also, this part was done with the assistance from PG&E. They did identify locations where we need level 3 chargers. One of those is in the Larkspur, Corte Madera area. Level 3 chargers are particularly helpful when they're located near highways, like on frontage roads, so that people who are traveling long distances and need to pull over and charge their vehicle have easy access to a level 3 charger. But they also can be very helpful for people who live in multifamily buildings and need to go and charge the vehicle and then drive back to their building. Quick look at municipal fleets. As you can see, these are all battery electric vehicles that are in each of the fleets. Corte Madera has 3 passenger cars and 1 e-bike. Pretty much kind of, pretty similar across the board. It's much easier at this point to swap out a passenger vehicle and get like a Chevy Bolt. You see a lot of those in the fleet, but they have, most municipalities have very limited uses for passenger cars. They're like planning staff, or they're used to go to meetings, or they were before COVID anyway, to do field inspections, but there's just not a lot of the vehicles in a municipal fleet are special duty vehicles, and there's not a lot of options at this point for EVs for those types of vehicles. So the barriers to EV adoption, we've sorted them into these 4 categories. The vehicle technology, EV range is getting much better, and it's continuing to improve, but the EV range for used vehicles is, can be pretty low. There still are issues and challenges around battery degradation, again, especially in the used EV market. And as I was saying, just a lack of diversity in vehicle types. We need more EVs that are light and heavy duty trucks. We need police pursuit vehicles. And there's been, at least the last couple of years, it's been difficult to get cars in general, and especially EVs. The charging batteries, there's not enough charging locations, both for level 2 and level 3. The cost to install chargers can be pretty high. It can be difficult to get EV charging in multifamily buildings. As I said, the cost to just upgrade an electrical panel at home can be a barrier for some people. Also, one of the things that we've been noting, and there was a study that was done recently, is just the reliability of public chargers that are out there has also surfaced as an issue. The economics are really around the initial purchase price for EVs. They are still higher than internal combustion engine vehicles, although there are studies out there that say that they're expecting that just in a couple of years that we will have price parity with internal combustion engines. And then, of course, the cost of ownership, it's much cheaper, especially with the gas prices, the way they've been to drive an EV. And then finally, just perceptions and behavior. There's a lot of misinformation, a misunderstanding about EVs, about how far they go, about batteries, about what the GHG emissions reductions really are. We find a lack of knowledge at car dealerships. A lot of the car salespeople, it's easier to just sell a car than to also teach somebody how to charge their battery and get them kind of over that hump of how to enter into the EV market for the first time. So the EV strategy has 35 actions. We've put them into 4 different areas. Again, the expectation here is that the jurisdictions it's kind of like a whole menu of choices, and we're hoping that each jurisdiction will identify and then prioritize actions for their own implementation. We do provide a sample work plan that's in the appendix for that purpose. And when we bring this EV strategy to the town and city councils for their review and hopefully acceptance and or adoption, if the jurisdiction so chooses, they could actually also fill out that work plan and bring that along with the strategy. That would be kind of an ideal situation. I'm highlighting just a couple of the actions in the conduct robust community outreach and education. A lot of this is around conducting and or supporting marketing campaigns. We do have nonprofit partners that we work with and other marketing firms that we can work with in order to get the word out about EVs. And then there's a big opportunity for local jurisdictions to use their communication channels that they already use to get information out to the community, like their newsletters, social media accounts, banners, just to help to promote the messages that we'll be designing around why the benefits, why you should drive an EV, and also events like drive an EV events, and also to just promote the rebates and incentives that are available for the community. Under Accelerate Public Charging Infrastructure, we have 15 actions. One among them is this model reach code. We see a real need to kind of go above and beyond what the state is doing and require higher percentage of EV-ready parking spaces for multifamily buildings and for and other commercial uses and workplaces. There are actions around making sure that cities and towns put their public charging infrastructure into their capital improvement plans. Dana mentioned shovel-ready projects. So when grants become available, we need to kind of already have an idea of like what is needed and where those should be so that we're ready to kind of jump on the opportunities and to plan in advance for building out the public charging infrastructure. We are recommending directing municipal investment in frequently used properties like community centers and also locations that are near multifamily buildings, again, to kind of get at that multifamily piece that is the most challenging. And there are also actions around e-bike facilities to provide charging for e-bikes and also secure parking and storage for e-bikes, because we know that they are high theft targets. And then finally, increase municipal fleet electrification. We have actions around fleet replacement strategies. As I mentioned, the passenger vehicles are fairly easy at this point to change out, but looking at what are the models available? Is it better to lease or purchase vehicles when we're looking at like replacing street sweepers and fire trucks and pursuit vehicles that are used by the police and heavy duty trucks that are used by our public works department. So there's a lot of need around helping local jurisdictions to kind of figure out that piece of it. Our goal is to convert 100% of all of the municipal fleets to EVs by 2030. And then there are actions to just promote chargers, because all of these new electric vehicles in the municipal fleets are going to need chargers. So the jurisdictions need to kind of identify locations for where they're going to install chargers, whether they're level 2 or level 3 for their own fleets. And then finally, we have the area around support and advocate for policy and funding that accelerates EV adoption. We're acutely aware that there's only so much that local governments can do. So we want to be sure that we're advocating at the state and national levels for these policies, and also to make sure that the funding is directed to communities like those in Marin County, and that the CEC and the Air District are kind of channeling some funding to us as well. And we also place a high priority on supporting programs and funding for equity priority communities that would have a more difficult time purchasing, leasing EVs, and also for publicly accessible chargers. So next steps, we are seeking input from community groups and from climate action committees like yours. We have the draft plan. You have it in your hand. It's also on the website at our marinclimate.org website. We are going to be taking these comments over the next, I think probably till the end of next month. We'll take all of the comments and then we'll be revising the strategy. And then at that point, bringing it to the city and town councils for acceptance this fall. So as far as getting your comments, I can take comments tonight, but if you would like to, I think Leslie had said something about, you know, one of the things that one of your subcommittees could do is like read these plans and then provide really thoughtful comments and suggestions on the plan, which we're happy to receive written comments in the future if you kind of prefer to do it that way. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have as well. Thanks.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a couple. One of the things that and this is so well done and such a great draft. Thank you, Christine. Always good to see you. The specificity in terms of, you know, these are, it seems more like an aspirational document without really clear dates and percentages. We want to, you know, I mean, there are certainly those, but one of the things I was just sort of thumbing through this yesterday is just that specificity that this needs to be bold, but it needs to be really clear up front, I think, that we need to do this because, and by this date, by so much. The percentages of, you know, 80% of our transportation greenhouse gas emissions are from personal vehicles, but what does that actually equate to? You know, like how many tons of carbon, and to reduce it down to, you know, 40% or 50% by 2030, what does that look like? Those are the sorts of things that I think helps all of us understand the gravity of the situation, as well as understanding, at least in some context, what the path forward is. I know I'm looking at you over here and the microphone's over here, so I don't know if you can hear me. But.
And I just see a whole line, you know, just the dais with a bunch of people sitting at it. So I don't see you individually, but
you can
great comments, Leslie. And as far as the specificity, I'm not saying that correctly, so I'll move on. But you know, we did struggle with that a little bit because it is a county-wide strategy that we want all of the cities to sign on to, and it is kind of a first step. I think the specifics really come in that work plan in the jurisdictions, identifying, prioritizing. If you look at the work plan, it's, you know, identifies who's responsible for it, and it has timeframes and it has funding sources. So that's where kind of the rubber meets the road. Your comment about the greenhouse gas emissions reductions, I think, is a really good one. And I think I can try to see how else to weave that into the document. It's different for different communities, which is why, everybody has kind of sets their, that's really addressed individually in the climate action plans. And each community has set a GHG reduction target, and then we need this many EVs, and we'll get this much GHG reduction out of it for each community. But I think I can do something on a kind of a community-wide basis and add that to the plan. I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
One other thought on the on page 25, table 7, the barriers to EV adoption. I know that you spoke with and interviewed stakeholders from all different sectors, but I'm wondering if this is a catalog of perceptions, or if this is reality, or if it's both in terms of the feedback that you got, which are impressions and perception, versus explaining that actually people think this, but the reality is X. And I'm just curious in terms of presenting this information, if it's not, it looks to me that barriers to adoption, well, this is the real thing. These are the real barriers, as opposed to some of them might very well be the perception of what the barriers are.
Yeah, I think that's true. We did try to be sure that we were keeping the perceptions and behavior to its, to in that bucket, as opposed to having them in the others. I'm just kind of I think I will look through this again, kind of with that eye. Some of these things are definitely perceptions. I'm just looking at the plan here. But I don't know. I think some of them are perceptions, and then some of them are like, the landscape is always changing. EVs are getting less expensive. The batteries are improving, so I think like we're going to be moving from like what reality is, and then it will still be that perception is going to linger after the reality's changed. But thank you for that comment.
Christine, when you were working on the strategy, were there model communities that you identified that could be inspirational or people could benchmark us against? Are there examples that people can learn from? So this doesn't sound like we're the first ones.
Yeah, we did look at some others. There aren't a lot of EV acceleration plans out there. There were some ideas like having an EV charger within, so many feet of, but I think there are some strategies that really work better for cities or for more urban environments than for kind of a suburban environment like Marin County. So there were a few that we kind of, thought were really interesting, but weren't applicable to Marin. So I can't say that there's any particular other plan that I would.
I know that in Mountain View, the planning code requires all new parking structures be EV ready for every single stall.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like some jaw droppers that would, help people understand that other communities are really stepping up and starting to make some plans for high saturation of EV vehicles.
I love that idea, like just call outs in the plan. Because I think that is really important, that every space should be 100%, of the spaces should be EV ready in multifamily buildings.
I see that Dana Armanino has her hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If I may, just to speak to that one, I experienced a real world example where I think it's a bold strategy, and it's one we included in our 2019 building code, is if you're renovating a parking lot and exposing, you should put conduit at 100% of the spaces. But we had a real world example where it was a very large parking lot, something like 400 spaces, and it was during very expensive supply chain issue things that we're going through. And the conversation was, do you really want conduit to 100 spaces, or do you want EV chargers installed? Because you're not, with those kinds of costs, you're not necessarily going to get both. And so I would maybe suggest that there is a maximum. And do you really, even with full saturation, people don't charge every place they go. I don't charge my Bolt at every single parking lot. So I don't know if you need EV charging in 100% of spaces everywhere. So I would maybe suggest that there be some kind of cap on the conduit, and then maybe say require conduit to 50% of the spaces, or installed chargers at 20% of the spaces, to give them encouragement to actually get to the equipment, because that's what we want. And it is a little bit easier to then add stations later on when you have some equipment there as well, because the lines are run and everything else. So just something we're considering at the county.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why we weren't specific in the strategy, because I think these things do require a lot more, you know, each one, a lot more thought and an analysis.
Yeah.
So
we ran into that with one of our large parking spaces, and it was an interesting experience. So
yeah,
something to think about.
It is really interesting. Thanks, Dana.
I wasn't arguing to make a policy as big as that, or a regulation as big as that. I was just encouraging that the document be a little, provide some references for places that are implementing regulations that are reaching further. That's, I think it's helpful for the public, especially when they see benchmark examples. So that was my suggestion.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I think that's a great suggestion, and a document, or actually a website. I have the book, but the website is updated more frequently than the book. The legal pathways to deep decarbonization. It's actually a great resource of policies, both adopted as well as templates and drafts, put together by, I believe, Columbia University's legal, in their law school, but it's an environmental group within the law school. Anyway, LPDD, Legal Pathways to Deep Decarbonization. It covers transportation and buildings and energy and everything that falls under deep decarbonization, but it's a really good resource for just getting ideas and sort of that compare and contrast that I would recommend to anybody who's trying to sort this stuff out and see what else has been done or considered.
Great, thank you. I will definitely check that out.
We've got one more beefy agenda item. Should we move on?
We probably should.
Any capping comments or thoughts? Otherwise, we'll say thank you, Christine. Any thoughts?
My pleasure.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. I would just say, obviously in the interest of time, maybe an agenda item for next meeting is how this group supports this when it's ready. So there's a work plan template. Is that something we get involved in? I don't know what the answer is to that, but I'd rather get ahead of it than behind it.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our last item on the last action item or presentation has to do with the response to the grand jury report recently on the electrification of buildings. And we have Chris Ragland here, the building official as well, who prepared the council response that went to the council last night.
Hello, Climate Action Committee. Sounds like you guys have formed at such an opportune moment in this county's history. It's very exciting. And couldn't follow a better countywide approach than Christine's presentation regarding the grand jury's report on electrifying Marin's buildings, a countywide approach. And I think a good summary of the intent behind this report is found on page 10. And it is the first paragraph. It says a countywide planning process focused on equity, the need for coordinated, comprehensive, and strategic planning to effectively address building electrification. I'll quickly read that first paragraph. As shown by the ongoing effort to develop Marin's model reach code, coordination between and among the county and its cities and towns increases the potential for achieving widespread, meaningful results in the short term. All of Marin's local jurisdictions are facing similar challenges in electrifying their building sectors and in reaching greenhouse gas reduction targets. Building departments will play an important role in implementing changes in building codes and permitting requirements. Uniformity will ease the burden on builders and contractors and thus help to accelerate the adoption. And with the report from a grand jury, there was 6 findings and 3 recommendations. And the more I reflect on it and think about the conversations I've had with other building officials in Marin County, recommendation number 3 is most essential because it asks for
where are the findings? Sorry.
Yeah, the findings are in the report from the grand jury and also in the response to the grand jury.
Page 18.
Page 18. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
18 of 19.
Yeah, so there's the findings and the recommendations. And as I've summarized, like I did a council meeting last night, recommendations somewhat could be summarized in recommendation 1 is electrifying new structures. So no more gas-fueled appliances and new structures. Recommendation 2 is existing structures, major renovations and the like. And number 3 is the one, again, following Christine's presentation, that county-wide approach, having a uniform and consistent methodology and practices and shared resources and information to take that county-wide approach instead of each jurisdiction kind of having their own little nuanced building code, reach code. It's going to be much more effective to have a coordinated effort for the building community. And also, as I said at council meeting last night, I think it'll add a lot more impetus to the statewide effort for the next code cycle to be a broader electrification in the model code, not just per jurisdiction in county. So currently, out of the 12 jurisdictions, there's only 2 that have or will be implementing recommendation number 1. Residential structures, no gas fuel fired appliances. Recommendation 2, the existing across all jurisdictions needs further analysis, may implement it, but not yet, need more clear direction on that. And then there are 3 that all jurisdictions want to implement that as well as strategic plan to approach the electrification with all stakeholders. And so all the different facets that you guys are vastly aware of that can involve the electrification. So it's kind of a summary with the time that we have. Questions?
What was the council's opinion? Did they provide any guidance to you last night?
It was quite a long council meeting last night, especially because of the Caltrans presentation. So, and it was towards the end, but they all agreed on the response to the grand jury at this time. Yeah. So as far as recommendation number 1, may be not implemented now, may be implemented in the future. Recommendation 2 for existing buildings needs further analysis. Recommendation 3, not implemented now, but may be implemented in the future.
I think the challenge that the building officials faced and the councils in adopting a response was they don't have a model code in front of them. The model code is, weeks away, a month away. So they don't really have anything to really gauge what does, the new building code look like? What does the, remodel code look like? So I think that's why a lot of the towns are saying, we'll take a wait and see approach, although the wait and see is going to be a pretty short time frame.
I wanted to thank you for your write-up on this for the council. And I'm thrilled that on all of the recommendations that it's agree. But thank you very much. What are the two towns that are taking a bigger leap than most that you mentioned for number one, R1?
Yes. Respectfully, those towns had to, navigate their own politics involved, was Fairfax and San Anselmo.
No surprise.
And it has been discussed that many times, even our jurisdiction, town of Corte Madera, how many new structures are actually being built. Yeah. And so it can be, to be frank, an easy political give. Say, so we're doing something. But even as the Marin County or the grand jury report, the biggest implication is going to be through the existing building stock.
Right. But
going forward, of course, new developments as well. But with that recommendation one, there's still further analysis on, is this going to be just new single family dwellings, multifamily as well, across the board, commercial, everything that's being built. So if we're truly to make to be frank again, to make a real significant difference, if we get the jurisdictions to really see what is the biggest win, it's going to make the biggest impact, and focus on that as a unified approach instead of just virtue signal that we're doing something.
So can I make sure I understand this? So 3 was the recommendation. Is that right?
Yeah, there's 6 findings.
Yep.
And 3 recommendations, correct.
So if we're to build if we're to develop this comprehensive countywide building electrification, that would be completed on January 1, 2024. And then you would, is that right? Is that the date?
The new building code has to be adopted by this coming January
2023.
1st.
Right. But the recommendation number 3 talks about having a full strategic plan by 2024, January.
Okay, so that's what the 2024 date.
So yeah,
recommendation 3.
The idea there is, how to do public outreach, how to try to get, rebate funds. And so again, that's the idea, is that there's a strategy that goes behind the code adoption.
Including, input from all stakeholders, financial incentives, rebates, things, all that is going to be needed to truly make it successful.
But numbers 1 and 2, again, the city councils, town councils will be considering the new code adoption by the end of the year. So again, wait and see, and we'll see what the model code looks like and make a decision. That time frame is, 4 months.
But that language is evolving right now, right?
It is. And the intent is that your next meeting, the lion's share of your agenda is going to be on the electrification, the draft code.
What's the way that this committee communicates to council? Let's say, for example, like in the near future, maybe after the next meeting, we wanted to communicate something to council about early adoption of codes or action, or don't just sit on this, move quickly.
You'll take a formal action.
If we wanted to do that, how would we say that?
You have to have it agendized on your meeting schedule, and then through motion and adoption, you send a letter. The chair typically, pens the letter to the council saying, the committee is recommending this for these reasons. And so things like, things that are going to definitely be coming to the council, the electrification ordinance. You heard today, the EV acceleration strategy, the reusable foodware ordinance. All those things will ultimately come to the town council. And I think that they're expecting you to review those in advance and give them your best guidance.
So I'm just thinking timing wise, like it's shortening. So can we take a step back and say, hey, maybe this is an ad hoc subcommittee that creates the recommendation to present at our next meeting? Because otherwise,
yes,
I feel like we're behind.
Yes, although
no, I was going to just add to that where by this January, we need to adopt the new model code, the California code, right? But we can make further refinements to that code after that as well. We just need to adopt the new updated code, the new version. And so, but once that has happened, we can make more specific, municipality.
I think there are some concerns that this model code may not be fully ready for prime time. Again, they're doing a lot of outreach now. I've sat in on a few focus groups, and so they're trying to understand all the nuances and ramifications before it hits the public. So yes, you can form a subcommittee. I would say that, again, this is going to be on your agenda for September. It probably won't get to council for adoption of the new building code until November-ish, I'm guessing. Probably late November. So you do have a couple months. You could have a subcommittee that looks into this more deeply and brings forth a recommendation, but I don't think the model code is going to even be out until probably the end of this month or early September.
So I think we did agree to have a policy subcommittee, and I think it's Phil and I, for starters, the two of us.
You haven't formally adopted that policy subcommittee. You would need to do that.
Oh, I thought we had.
No, you just set up the one right now for the events for this next 2-month period.
Oh, I thought
and the next meeting we're going to discuss.
People were raising their hands to do all of this.
Maybe I slowed us down a little bit. I just wanted, it seemed like I was thinking that we bring it to the meeting to the next meeting to vote on it.
Okay.
If the committee wanted to vote on all of those choices today, I'd accept a motion.
I guess we did sort of say we're going to think about it.
Yeah.
Apologies. I'm chomping at the bit.
But if it seemed like one meeting made sense, just to let it gel.
Whatever you guys want to do.
That's great. I'm just looking. I'm wondering if we want to agendize something on the next meeting, because if we don't have it on the agenda, we don't have the possibility of making a motion. If we do have it on the agenda, we can make a motion.
Can we have something on the agenda and then not get to it? Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying to get to the next. So if we're done with this item, the next item is the upcoming agenda. So are there any other questions or comments regarding specifically the grand jury?
Quick discussion. Is there anybody that has that's read the grand jury opinion and has been following the model code that finds flaw with it? I would love to hear if anybody has identified a problem.
I read it. I haven't done a careful analysis yet.
Yeah.
But I've read it. It's actually one of the best grand jury reports I've ever read. And I've read a lot of them. This is a really well done, really thoughtful, well-researched piece.
Yeah. I think the model code that the last version I spent time with was even pulling back from some things that they could be doing. And from what I've learned from working with other jurisdictions in California, when the building department looked at the barriers and obstacles to success, capacity of staff was one of the key barriers. And capacity of staff was one of the key barriers. And the way around that was finding other ways of streamlining permit and inspection process, that the number of if there's the strictest interpretation of the code, the amount of time that it takes staff to process, do the inspection, do the review and approval, it was prohibiting success of the program. Have you thought about that as a body?
Yeah. Very much so. And you touch on something very important that is actually mentioned. It's mentioned in the grand jury report and in the McCAB, Marin County Advisory Committee or Board. It's basically building officials in Marin County. And how, if we all do this together and have shared resources like forms and handouts and processes, and that's even going to make it more streamlined. So if we each have our own nuanced way of doing it, it is going to be much more of a burden to staff, put it that way, and much more bureaucratic and regulatory and frustrating for applicants, because we're not being able to lean and soundboard with the other jurisdictions because each one of us does it a little differently. But if we all have a uniform approach, we can say yes and share resources. As far as forms, even, you know, what people put on their websites, and it'd be easier for the contractors and the customers. Oh yeah, much more, because that's one of the most frustrating things, as you may know, is when a contractor, a design professional says, that's not the way they do it over there. Huh, aren't you guys on the same code? It's like, well, each municipality makes amendments. And so it can be not only frustrating, but can disincentivize getting permits as well. People say, no, it's too much hassle. I'd rather get a new water heater and just keep it gas instead of going electric, for example.
Yeah.
So we want to incentivize it as much as possible.
Should we close on this topic? Okay. Any other last comments, anyone? Okay. Thank you so much, Chris. Great to meet you.
Likewise.
So for our upcoming agendas, the intent is to have Chris back at your next meeting, and really devote the lion's share of the meeting on presentation on what this draft code looks like, Chris's reaction, at least at that point, to it. And then at that point, you may think you have enough information to make recommendations for the council. You may want to subcommittee it to get a little deeper. I think, again, you probably have until your October meeting to actually come up with your recommendations, because I don't think the council will get this until November.
So if we agendize this as a discussion item after the presentation, that would allow us to make an action if we so chose.
Yes, absolutely.
Can we do that?
Mm-hmm. By the way, I'll be out of the country on September 11th, on September 21st. So Phil Boyle, you'll be in his good hands for that meeting. October 19th, was looking ahead to getting you familiar with resilient neighborhoods. That's one of the 7 strategies for the Marin Can. It's a real excellent program. Just so you're familiar with what they're accomplishing and doing in the community. And then I thought we'd schedule a discussion about a review of the draft county single-use foodware ordinance. They're going to be bringing that to the cities and towns this fall, and requesting adoption in the various communities. So I would note that meeting is on the same date as the 2-night Marin Green home tour. I'm super involved in that, so I would not be able to be here for the meeting. So if you're amenable, I would poll the committee to see if the 12th or the 26th would work as an alternative. And so that's really all I have. Is there anything else that you really want to have? Obviously, on the 21st, we're going to come back with subcommittees. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we have on the agendas?
I felt like one of the things I wanted to jump on, and we discussed this, was getting the website to have the information that we want to have on it. Who's got the best record of those discussions from like a year ago, maybe? Is that you?
Martin. I have your mock-up.
My mock-up? Oh, that's what I did a mock-up, didn't I? Yeah. Yes. Could we agendize that to go as a group? Because some people haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, sure. So put that on the agenda. We want to review. And could you bring that?
If you can get in whatever draft you have, get it to me. I'll get it to everybody.
Okay. And it might.
But you have it.
I did it. I'm sure I have it somewhere in my terabyte of data. Yeah, somewhere.
Another note on the Climate Action Committee's webpage, it says that we're currently on hold and our next meeting is to be determined. So maybe we should update that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
that can probably be done quickly.
I think that was the only item that I wanted to try to put on the agenda in addition to the ones we've discussed.
Okay.
Do we need to confirm the schedule for October next meeting then?
Yes. Yeah, we will. And in the interim, I'll work with the two co-chairs and see if anything else comes to mind to put on the September agenda.
So you say co-chairs, you said that twice. I think we said chair and vice chair. Is that what we're doing, or do you want to be co-chairs?
I think you said.
Chair.
Oh, okay. Oh, you set it up that way?
Yeah.
It's not co-chair.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I
Good deal.
Understood.
Okay. Got it.
So do I have to get a motion to adjourn, or do I just adjourn?
I think you could just adjourn.
I'm gonna call it. Any other discussion? Off we go, guys.